Hello there, how are you guys doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So on my last video, I discussed the PlayStation 4 and how its sales over the holiday for 2016 were actually really strong. Stronger than a lot of us probably anticipated, at least stronger than I certainly anticipated. And through that, they now confirm that the total for PlayStation 4 units sold is 53.4 million lifetime across the entire world, which is incredibly impressive. Now, through that video, I also mentioned to you guys that I'd been wanting to make a video discussing some of the platform total sales for quite a while, and I hadn't had a chance to do so, but now that I sort of popped the cherry, so to speak, with that last video and kind of started discussing the PlayStation 4's crazy successful sales, I wanted to really get into this conversation about the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, because let's face it, especially this last 2 years, the real competition in the home console gaming industry has been between Sony and Microsoft. So the real question I wanted to ask today and discuss is whether or not there's a chance for the Xbox One to end up catching up to the PlayStation 4 in sales. And I know it seems like a crazy idea right now. I'll go over the numbers in a minute. But I don't think it's something that isn't necessarily worth discussing. I think that there's always an angle to come at this from, and there's certainly the possibility. It's funny because around a year and a half ago, in the months leading up to the release of Halo 5, I was asked a question by a user at that time who wanted me to discuss whether or not I thought Halo 5 might help the Xbox One catch up to the PlayStation 4 or even surpass the PlayStation 4. And remember, this was a year and a half ago. This was like mid-2015. This was at a time where the difference between sales for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One was much smaller. There's actually a fairly sizable gap now, but at that time it was a little bit smaller, so the question didn't seem crazy. Halo 5, of course, was the brand new Halo game. Halo's always going to bring a lot of hype. Halo's always going to sell a lot of consoles, and obviously 5 didn't sell quite as well as they wanted, and I don't think it really moved a whole lot of Xbox Ones, which is really sad to me because I think the game is amazing. Still, the question was valid. Halo's a big deal. Will this be the beginning, is what this person was asking. Will this be the beginning of the Xbox One starting to gain ground on the PlayStation 4? And at the time, I said yes, it definitely could be that. Obviously, that didn't really end up being the case, but at the time, I saw it being as a potential possibility that, yeah, the Xbox One is becoming more and more affordable as the days are going on. Halo 5 is going to be a big deal. Everyone's excited for it. It always sells consoles. Granted, there would still be a long way for the Xbox One to go to catch up to the PlayStation 4, but I seriously believed that Halo 5 and that period, 2015, was going to be the beginning of the Xbox starting to basically shorten the gap. And nowadays, that's not the case. As far as what I can see for numbers, and again, I'm looking at VG charts, which is only updated up until November, so it's about a month and a half outdated. The Xbox One had 25.5 million units sold. The PlayStation 4 had 49 million units. So that's just about, basically the Xbox One had just about half as many units sold as the PlayStation 4 in November. Fast forward to January, and we know that the PlayStation 4 has shot up from 49 to 53.4. We don't know the hard numbers for the Xbox One, but let's assume the same kind of jump. So we're going to make it at about 29.5 million. So if we were to guess 29.5 million Xbox Ones against 53.4 million PS4s, we're still looking at a pretty big gap. Now, the tricky thing is the other angle that I wanted to come at this from, and this sort of throws a wrench in the whole idea of the PlayStation 4 never being surpassed by the Xbox One. Now, we all know that Microsoft has been making really good ground and doing a lot of great things throughout the last year with the Xbox One, and I'm really happy to see it because I freaking love the Xbox One. I absolutely love that console. And what we also know is leading up until November, which we know was the month that Sony launched the PlayStation 4 Pro, if I'm correct, there were 4 months in a row where the Xbox One had outsold the PlayStation 4 worldwide, which was, to my knowledge, the first 4 times that it ever happened since the consoles launched. And that's impressive, and to me that spoke a lot. And it's why I'm really going to be curious to see what the final holiday numbers for the Xbox One are, because for all we know, they're even better than we're thinking, and maybe that gap really was closed a little bit more than I'm expecting. But the long and the short of it is, Microsoft started to do great things. They had great bundles. They had really solid deals. They lowered the price of the Xbox One. You can buy a very solid Xbox One S, which is very much recognized as an excellent machine and an excellent upgrade to the Xbox One. You can buy that for $250, and in most cases, with the free game. I mean, a lot of people are getting games like Gears of War 4 or Titanfall 2, Madden, Halo 5, all for free with their $250 Xbox One S. And I'm going to tell you guys, That is a better deal than anything I've seen out there for the PS4. There are some pretty good deals for the PS4, obviously, when you look at the Uncharted 4 bundles with the Slim and this and that. And as much as I also love my PS4, there's no doubt that I think the Xbox One is overall a better made machine, even though it obviously doesn't have the power to necessarily keep pace with the PS4. I feel like that gap is close enough. And when you look at what I think is a better running machine, a better controller, and a really solid exclusive lineup with games like Gears of War and Halo 5, Quantum Break, Sunset Overdrive, Ori and the Blind Forest, stuff like that, I think it's a great value, and people have started to see that. And Microsoft is really starting to pump what's happening with the Scorpio. For some reason, that didn't hinder sales of the Xbox One. It actually improved sales of the Xbox One. So it's weird when you look at, okay, this gap for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One is bigger now than it's ever been, yet at the same time, Microsoft started to outsell the console in the last half of the year, last year in 2016. And I think that that says something. Now, does that confirm that without a shadow of a doubt, the Xbox One is going to catch up to the PlayStation 4 and maybe even surpass it? Absolutely not. There's really no way to know exactly what's going to happen here. But I do think that this race will eventually get much, much closer. Let's go back to the 7th generation and look at how the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 race played out. If you guys remember, the Xbox 360 had a year lead on the PS3 and the Wii, but it sold like crazy within that first year, and it was an excellent machine, despite the red ring of death. It was a great machine that people loved, with a great library, and people were very excited for that new generation at that time, the first HD generation. And then the PlayStation 3 came out, and it was a disaster. It was way too expensive at $600. It was continually breaking. It was very awkward to program for. It wasn't getting a lot of ports, and the few ports it did get were running like garbage compared to the 360 counterpart, because the 360 was a cleaner running machine that was much better and easier to program for, as far as we understand. And no one was really buying into the PS3 much at that time. And so for the first 3 or 4 years of those consoles' life, I mean, forget about it. The PS3 wasn't even barely able to keep pace with the 360. The 360 was the dominant of those two HD twins. Obviously, the Wii isn't a factor because the Wii was selling better than everything combined pretty much for most of that time until the last couple of years of its life. So the 360 was selling so much better than the PS3, but eventually fortunes started to change. And around 2010, I'd say 2009, 10, or 11 or so, I would say probably 2009 or 10, around the time that Uncharted 2 was coming out and God of War 3. I think that you can sort of mark the beginning of the shifting of the tides for the PS3 around the time that those two games were being pumped and shown at E3 and releasing. That really changed everything for the PS3. More Uncharted 2 than even God of War 3, because I remember the incredible E3 showing that they had and how excited people were, and suddenly people were starting to understand what the PS3 is capable of. What I remember happening after this time where the PS3 started to become more appealing is they released the first model of the Slim, they fixed the problems, they made it cheaper, these great games were coming out that were exclusive. Suddenly we were seeing what the power the PS3 was capable of thanks to companies like Naughty Dog, and all of a sudden, people started to buy into the PS3 more. It was cheaper and easier to pick up for people. And also, I think the developers started to realize, hey, if we really do spend the time and money to find the best way to make our games for the system, we really do get an incredible experience. And you got a lot of exclusives coming out of that for the PS3, and you got a lot of better... You basically got ports that were just as good, if not sometimes better than the 360 counterparts. And all of a sudden, the PS3 started to sell better than the Xbox 360. And when you look at those consoles at the end of their life, at the end of the race, which probably goes to 2013, if you really want to count it as that, that's like a neck-and-neck race, whereas at one point there was a 20 or 30 million probably lead of the Xbox 360 over the PS3. The PS3 caught up, and they both finished somewhere in the range of 80 million units apiece. So all of a sudden, they were neck and neck, and they were even swapping leads near the end of the generation, if I'm not mistaken. That's the power of the changing tides. It's the power of smart marketing. It's the power of good deals. It's the power of exclusive content. And it's the power of quality ports. And all of those things combined helped change the fate of the PS3 so that it caught up to the 360, which several years prior seemed impossible. So when I bring that back to today's conversation about the Xbox One and the PS4, at the end of the day, it's not a lock, and if I had to put money on it, I would still cautiously but semi-confidently put money on the PS4 maintaining a fairly decent lead over the Xbox One throughout the entirety of their lives. That's going to be my guess. That being said, obviously the PS3 showed us that it's not impossible for a console in the Xbox One's position to change its fate, to catch up to the competition, potentially surpass it. The Xbox One S and its exclusive games are doing great things, and If the Scorpio, I've discussed this before, when the Scorpio comes out, if that truly counts itself as an Xbox One SKU and an Xbox One family machine, that could be the biggest X factor of them all and really help the Xbox One catch up to and potentially even surpass the PlayStation 4. So pretty interesting stuff, and of course the Nintendo Switch, which launches in just 2 months, could change all of this. Who knows how that bad boy is going to factor into this crazy console race discussion here, and whether or not, of course, that's a 9th or an 8th or an 8.5 generation. We don't even know what's going on there. What's the Scorpio going to be? Basically, it's about to get a lot messier throughout this year, but in my opinion also, a hell of a lot more exciting. So that's what's going on, you guys. Tell me what you think about the console race below. Do you think the Xbox One has a chance to ever catch up to the PlayStation 4? Do you think that it's game over for them? They're always destined to be second place, and they're never going to surpass what the PlayStation 4 and the PS4 Pro are doing? Tell me what you guys think. I can't wait to see what happens when the Switch comes out and maybe changes all this whole crazy stuff. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks, of course, for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.